Hello everyone. Today we're looking at game 4 from the Linares match in 1992, candidates match between Nigel Short and Anatoly Karpov. Now, first we're gonna just recap. Game 1 was won by Anatoly Karpov with the white pieces. Nigel Short opened up in enterprising fashion with the Budapest gambit, a rarely seen guest at top levels. But Karpov was able to get his type of position, a quiet, technical position, where he can just basically squeeze the life out of Nigel, and he did a good job in that position. Although Nigel helped early on with the move d6 to allow his pawns to get messed up on the queen side. Game 2, Short had the white pieces, and we got to see Anatoly bring out a weapon which he would use in the latter part of his career, which was the Khan, replacing his formerly used weapon, which is E5 in response to E4. In his older years, Karpov was playing, trying to play more quietly, and it's less preparation dealing with the Khan than say the Rui Lopez. So in game 2, Short would be playing the advanced variation. We can see what's ahead, and this is known as the short variation. Uh, and although the position is locked, there's a lot of potential because of the pieces remaining on the boards. A lot of tension remains in the position, and this is fits right in with Nigel's strategy against Karpov in this match, which was to just maintain a lot of dynamic piece play and activity, whereas Karpov is trying to quiet down things and get, a nice technical advantage that he can convert possibly later on in the end game, usually getting the opponents to overpress and trying to stir up complications. Instead, they leave weaknesses, and Karpov just kind of cleans up. So, game 2 ended in a draw after 32 moves. And game 3 was very, very interesting. Again, it was a draw in a marathon that 94 moves, which is good for the younger Nigel Short. In this match, again, Short was 26 years old, Karpov 41. So Karpov, of course, was known to get tired in matches. So to have a 94 move game in game 3 was good for a Short to wear out his older opponent. And this long game combined with the style of play that Nigel was playing at the time, this dynamic, constantly attacking, constantly putting pressure on the opponent, tends to wear one down, even the greatest defender. So Karpov here had the white pieces in game 3. Short had the black pieces. And just to give you an example how he was playing. Now in the first game, Short played the Budapest gambit. This game, he plays Queen's Gambit accepted. So already Karpov is kind of thrown off. He doesn't know what to play or what to expect from Nigel Short at this point. Karpov goes for E4, Knight F6. Now this line is similar to an Alakon defense for black. Bishop takes C4, Knight B6, and similar themes. The pressure on the center. Bishop E4, trying to preserve the bishop here. And this move F5 drags Anatoly Karpov in the type of position that he doesn't really want to play. So E takes F6, E takes F6, and now here it is. Karpov is with the isolated pawn, and which tends to force the player that's holding the isolated pawn to play in a dynamic type fashion, where he has to search for the initiative and not wait to counterattack. And this is a good psychological choice by Nigel, as he's forcing Karpov to have to play in a style that is not really his forte. F5, Bishop F3, Knight 4 D5, Bishop D2, Bishop drop back to E6, Knight G E2, Queen d7, castle, and then here's Nigel castling on opposite wings. So he's forcing Karpov to fight. Okay, and he's forcing them out of these quiet positional technical games that he's trying to look for. Remember, Karpov wants to Carol Khan in white and black. He just wants everything quiet. Get to a middle game, exchange some pieces off. Win some, win a pawn, and then just win the game. But here it is, all these pieces on the board, opposite wing castling, and Anatoly has the isolated pawn. Nigel prepares his assault. Okay, on the king side, g5, again forcing Karpov to fight, putting pressure on Karpov. Rook c1, bishop takes e5, d takes e5. Now the queens come off. Of course, Karpov will be happy about this. And notice again how Karpov is transforming the position. Notice how Karpov no longer has an isolated pawn, right? His pawn structure is now pristine. So you can see the battle of wills. Like Short is trying to mix it up, Karpov's trying to calm things down. a6, g3, rook e7, b3, rook d7, f3, knight d5, knight a4, of course going for that c5 square and forcing weakness from Nigel, b6, bishop e2, king b7, now bishop c4, c5, king f2, and this is the type of game now that Anatoly likes to play. Rook g d8, rook e2, knight c7, rook c c2. But at the same time, Nigel Short has played very well. He has the pawn on e6 thoroughly blockaded. Excuse me, on e5 thoroughly blockaded by the bishop on e6. He has more space, okay, on the queen side and the king side, and this is going to be a big factor in this game. King c6. So he's improved his king, and now after knight b2, b5. So now he forces the bishop to exchange. This is favorable for Nigel. So now Nigel has a nice advantage here. He possesses the only open file. He has the white pawn blockaded on e6, and he's prepared to jump into d4 with the knight. And he has more space, and his king is better. This gives Nigel an advantage, but of course he has to convert. All of Nigel's pieces are better here. So he's done a good job outplaying Karpov at his own game. So rook d4, king e1, rook 4 d5, and now knight d4, rook e3, f4. I know I said we are going to go over game 4, but we have to look at this game. This is important. G takes f4, rook e4, knight e6. Again, maintaining the blockade, maintaining control over the file. Now here, Nigel plays the move rook d2. A stronger move, knight to g5 here, attacking this rook. And play may continue, for instance, rook e1. And now rook g8. And for example, now if let's say rook h1 here, knight h3 check, and let's say king f1, king d7. White has to guard this g file, and now the pressure comes here. And white is pretty close to losing in this situation. The pawn weaknesses are too great, and all the pieces again are passive. So knight g5 was An important move that Nigel could have played there. Rook e2. Now rook d4. Rook e2. King d5. So Nigel just had more space, better pieces, and just gradually encroaching on Karpov here. H5. Now he's going to gain space on the king side. Even here, move like c4 is pretty close to winning. c4, b takes c4. Say knight a4, rook d3, knight d4. Rooks come off, and now these knight and king endings are similar to just regular king and pawn endings. Of course, white wouldn't want to trade the knights there, and play can go as a sample line. I'm giving knight d4, knight c3. And king c5, and white is pretty much lost here. Black is going to play a5 and eventually penetrate into the queen side with his king. Instead of c4 here, Nigel played h5, which is okay. King f1, he just wants to gain more space on the king side and shut white down over there pretty much. So knight g5, king f2, and now h3. So he shuts white down from operating over there on the king side. So now rook c2, knight e6, king e2. 1 pawn drops. King takes e4 from Nigel. Knight d3 check from Karpov. King d6. Knight f2. The rook goes back to d5. And just in case, knight h3. You got to deal with that check. So this is why the rook, one of the reasons why the rook step back like that, to leave the threat in this fork. So rook d5, rook c3, avoiding that catastrophe. King c6, and now knight takes h3, but rook h5 just recovers the pawn back. Takes h2, king f1, but that's actually good for white to reduce the amount of pawns on the board. And this is what Karpov is doing. Is basically he's busted here, but just trying to reach a theoretically drawn ending. Knight d4, king g1. Rook goes back to h6, and now the rook's going to transfer to c6 to help support this pawn. And there it is, rook c6, knight c3 check, king e5, king to f1, rook h6. Of course, threatening just to go into the king and knight endings with rook h1. So rook e1 check, king f5, and then Karpov is preparing to check from the 8th rank. Knight takes f3, so he gives up another pawn. So surely Karpov is in dire straits here, but he keeps fighting on. He just keeps giving Nigel little problems here and there to deal with. Rook f8 check, king e5, knight g3, rook h7 from Nigel, king f2, blocking one pawn, the other pawn advances. Now rook c8 from Karpov. Now king d4 from Nigel, a very natural move. Another option is rook b7. And the idea behind rook b7 is that if rook takes c3, then rook b2 check. And let's say king e3, and rook takes a2. But again, with reduced material, it's a little more difficult to win. But I think black should be still winning here with these two pawns. So in this line, so rook b7, king e3, rook b2, rook c5 first, king e6, rook takes c3, and then rook takes a2. So it's kind of similar to the line I just showed you, just a different move order. But yeah, white should be losing here. Instead, Nigel plays a real natural move, king d4, just assisting the pawn. Rook d8 check, of course. What else? King c4. And now knight f5. And simply just making it difficult for Nigel to to win the game. So for instance, if he tried to just push this pawn, for example, and knight e3 check, king c3, and rook c8, and we just drop the pawn. So the rook gets behind the king and the pawn. Knight e3 check anyway, king b5, and now rook d1 to get in front of the pawn now. King a4. So Nigel decides to go directly after the a2 pawn with his king. Rook c1. Now Nigel plays rook d7. Again, the same idea as I showed you in the variation before. If rook takes c3, then rook d2 check. If king a3, then just rook c2. Again, just holding on for dear life. So back to the game. Nigel played rook d7. Rook takes c3. Again, this is good for white just in theory, because he's reducing the amount of pawns on the board. Each trade makes it more feasible that he can reach some kind of theoretical draw, even if he's a pawn down. King g3, and now the pawn threatens to promote. So f2, check. King a3, and rook f4. Nigel promotes to a knight with a check. So knight takes, and rook takes f1. a5. Of course, rook f5 attacking the pawn. a4. Rook f4. Rook takes a2. And believe it or not, ladies and gentlemen, this is actually a theoretical draw right here. And Karpov is played his way into it. He has a king far enough. From the enemy king, so whereby he can't get checked from the rook. In other words, in these type of endings, like say if the king was like over here or something like that, it would be possible for this pawn, say, to be on a2, and this rook to be on a1, and then at the right time the rook can come around and check and threaten to win the rook. Like say if the rook's over here or like behind the pawn or something. But with the king way back here, there's no way that black could ever get behind and check, and use like a promotion tactic like that. So the rook just simply checks from the side. There's nothing that black can do. Karpov just keeps checking. And then when the king approaches, then he just moves the rook over to the other side. And the game was agreed drawn after 10 more moves, because there's no there is no way that the pawn can promote without the assistance of the king. And as long as white can keep checking the king, there's nothing you can do about it. And of course at the a2, just simply rook a3. And this is what I was talking about. If this king was like here, right? Just hold this image in your head. Then black could then play this move, because if rook takes, the king and rook would be lined up, and you would be threatening to win it. And this is why it was a theoretical draw. Matter of fact, let me just show you real quick what I mean exactly. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, so this is what I was talking about. Imagine if the king, the white king, is here as I have it in this position that I just set up. Then black has this trick where he can just play rook h1, leaving this pawn alone because, you know, threatening to queen, and then after rook takes, then simply rook h2 and say king e1 or whatever, and then you just win the rook. And so notice here we're back at the actual game position where it ended on move 94. Notice that with black to move, that there is no such no such tactic in the position because Karpov's king is back far enough. Okay, so that's gonna be it for this video. I'll do game 4 on the next video because this game was really long, but I did want to show you game 3 because Nigel Short definitely missed a win. His technique had faltered somewhat, and he allowed Karpov to kind of swindle him into this this theoretically drawn position. Nevertheless, this had to be a confidence booster for Short because he definitely is playing, getting the type of positions that he wants. And even when Karpov was able to turn the position around, as far as like the, bring it back to the positional sense, so to speak. Like for instance, right here, you have Short with this opposite side castling, etc. But then a few moves later, the queens are off the board, and you see everything being consolidated. And you figure this is, Karpov's world right here. Well, Short even showed that he can, even outplay Karpov in his own style. So, to me, this is like a red flag that if Karpov can't dominate, in his type of position, then he's going to be in trouble because he's not going to be able to dominate Short in a, tactical slugfest. So if he gets the type of position that he favors, but then Short still outplays him, that is a red flag. So with that, we're gonna end this video on game 3, and then we're gonna come back with the next game with Nigel Short having the white pieces once again in game 4.